Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to this horror show. I am your host, Ruthie. I'm coming at you live from the Untold Sitcom studio offices with what one may call degenerate content. Today, I'm going to be discussing a topic that's rated M for get on out of here if you ain't 18. Go on, get. In a rare turn of events, I have a trigger list for you. So let me just pull that up for you. Trigger warnings for SA, rape, child abduction, child sacrifice, child trafficking, human trafficking, blood libel, anti-Semitism, sexual themes, stalking, suicidal ideation, physical abuse, mental abuse, toxic relationships, and QAnon. What a doozy. If you find any of those topics triggering, go ahead and skip this video. I promise it's not that important. My next video is going to be infinitely more positive because it's going to be a ridiculous deep dive into everyone's favorite cryptid, Mothman. Until then, go get yourself a little treat. You know, you deserve a spa day. Go take care of yourself. I love you. Bye. I will be deeply spoiling the book Haunting Adeline. So if you don't want spoilers, bye-bye. See you later. With that out of the way, let's get into Haunting Adeline and the horrors of BookTok recommendations. I will admit, I would have never read this book if it wasn't for the situation that we're about ready to talk about. I do like dark romances, just not this type. In fact, if I did read this book, I probably would have never made this video, but here we are. To get started, let me give you some backstory by talking about BookTok. If you're not familiar with the culture on TikTok, let me be your very quick guide. It is very common on TikTok to have topic talk. So, beauty talk, science talk, witch talk, motorcycle talk, etc., etc. So, naturally, BookTok is a place where authors and readers collide. It's a place where you can review, recommend, promote, and or trash books. This is a pretty big niche on TikTok, and I'm not just saying that because I happen to be a part of it. Hey, and that seems pretty harmless, right? You're wrong. There is a vocal minority of romance, dark romance, and erotica readers that will swarm pretty or attractive men in droves, whether it be people who ride motorcycles or hockey players, and then they, objectify them. BookTok has a problem with boundaries, a big one. You don't have to look any farther than how BookTok treated hockey Seattle Kraken player Alex Winberg. They thirsted over Mr. Winberg so hard that his wife felt compelled to ask people to stop sexualizing him so much, and then they harassed her for doing that. BookTok goes to certain men on TikTok and fawns over them, calling them BookTok boyfriends. In fact, there are certain people who know about this oncoming storm that they will go to these people that are in BookTok's profile and will comment some vague, ominous, and slightly threatening things like, wait until BookTok finds you. Like there's some cosmic horror entity about ready to rip through the sky. Cue the protagonists of this story. They wear a motorcycle helmet to obscure their identity, and they mostly post about riding their motorcycle. They are also 16 years old. Because they're 16, I'm not really going to go into who this person is. This child let the general public know that the books that they read is stuff like Hunger Games, Maze Runner, teenager books. Grown people were telling this 16-year-old child that their dystopian books about children fighting each other to the death was innocent. May I please remind you that the 16-year-old is reading age-appropriate books. However, people started recommending to this child erotica, smut, things not for children. I hope that you don't need me to explain why that is awful, icky, disgusting, gross. Oh my God, new TikTok from the sky. One of the books that was being highly suggested by, frankly, criminals at this point is the book that we're talking about today, Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlson, a smut book about stalkers. I wouldn't be talking about this book or even the situation if the recommendations were mild. Like, yes, recommending any type of smut to a teenager is bad, illegal, wee-woo, you're going straight to jail. But if they were recommending something like Icebreaker or The Love Hypothesis, I wouldn't really care that much. But no, they recommended this book. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. Quick tangent. You must be asking, what's dark romance? I heard you say that term. I'll explain it to you. Dark romance is romance, typically of the smut variety, where it explores darker themes and more intense kinks. Honestly, I really don't have anything against it. You want to know why? It's fiction. It's not real. On that note, let's take another tangent into my opinion about erotica. I've noticed an uptick of people who are exploring the romance and erotica genres of reading. And I think it's great. I think it's a harmless way to explore things that you definitely don't want to partake in IRL, if you know what I mean. People are clutching their pearls over sex scenes in books, but don't clutch their pearls over stuff like porn or Game of Thrones or any other wacky TV show that has sex scenes in it. People, for the most part, have sexual desires, and it is okay to explore those desires via the fiction that you consume. Haunting Adeline is a stalker romance novel, and that's not really what I have a problem with. That's what dark romance is about. Some people like the fantasy, the fiction of a stalker falling in love with them or them falling in love with a stalker. But that does not mean in any world that they want to partake in that in real life. It's not real. It's fantasy. I think that there are actually good elements in this book that would make for a good stalker romance. Not that I've ever read a stalker romance, not my cup of tea. We will definitely talk about things that I liked and things that I didn't like later. For now, let's go on to our next section. Before we delve into this video, I know, but I have to do this. I have to tell you about today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is me, because I'm afraid of accepting money from businesses, corporations, or anybody else who would sponsor me. Let's take a look at what I, the sponsor of this video, have to offer you, the viewer of this video. Stickers! Look at these that are related to the video you're watching. Ooh, a handwritten letter, pen pal style. Ooh, and commissions. Ruthie knows how to draw. Watching the two YouTube channels that I own, which is the one that you're currently on, and my Twitch VOD channel at the Untold Sitcom Archives, will help me get monetized, so that way I may get my pennies from our corporate overlords. If you prefer live streams, I do have a Twitch channel that is already monetized, so you can watch ads and help me get pennies over there, and also interact with present me. Instead of me, past Ruthie, the echo of present Ruthie. Barely an echo, barely a memory of current Ruthie. Not a memory of past or current Ruthie, but words. Words that I am reading off a script. Words that have been refined, edited, and shipped out to you. I am doomed to repeat these words over and 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 over. And now, armed with this knowledge, you know the best ways to support me. Stickers, pen pal letters, watching YouTube or Twitch, and contemplating our existence as people, as individuals, as memories, as videos. Thank you for watching this sponsor read. And remember, I'm not real. With all of that, do you think it's time to talk about the book? No, silly goose. We're going to talk about QAnon now. I have seen quite a few videos about Haunting Adeline, and generally they will mention that Haunting Adeline is a QAnon fanfiction and won't go into it. So I will take the sacrifice and very gently and very surface levelly take a look at QAnon and tell you about it. Big disclaimer, I did not go on a huge research bin about QAnon because honestly, that topic doesn't interest me and it kind of freaks me out. So I only looked at maybe a couple of articles, and the main article that I got my information from was the Britannica article, and I will link that in the description if you want to give that a nice in-depth read. I believe that that article will probably be your best jumping off point if you want to know more about this topic. But for now, I will go over what I learned. QAnon at its core is a huge and wild, baseless conspiracy that really hit its heights in the pandemic. And the members are just a little crazy. Yikes. Oh my gosh. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start in the era of 2016. In 2016, WikiLeaks got a hold of some emails by a guy named John Podesta. Who is this man? I don't know, nor do I care. Some users on 4chan, here I am talking about 4chan again, said that cheese pizza was code for CP. You know, child porn, which it can be true. It is an internet lingo for that thing, but boy, howdy, were they wrong. They took that and ran with it straight into the hills of Crazy Town. And so they spiraled down into the depths of conspiracy. And when they came back up and breathed, they shouted that this pizzeria in Washington, D.C., named Comet Ping Pong, was actually a front for a satanic cannibal cabal. The article uses the word cabal a lot, and that's just like a secret political faction or clique or what have you. Satanic Cannibal Cabal was a sex trafficking ring that operated in the basement of this Comet Ping Pong. This guy named Edgar Welch decided that he was going to arm himself to the teeth and go take down that satanic cannibal cabal thing, and drove himself from North Carolina to DC to go harass some pizzeria workers with actual weapons, of which he and everyone else found out that Comet Ping Pong did not have a basement. You following? They made a conspiracy theory, they made up details, and then it was ultimately wrong. Good. Flash forward to October 28th, 2017. Some random person who called themselves Q claims that Hillary Clinton is going to be arrested, which didn't happen. And that's really the huge trend that you're going to find in this conspiracy. They're going to claim, whether it be Q or Q's followers, are going to claim some big wacky thing, and surprise, surprise, it doesn't happen. We don't even really know who Q is, if it's actually just one person or if it's just a big group of people all cosplaying as some vigilante who's always wrong. Anyway, Q claims that they have Q clearance in the Trump administration, and that there is going to be this huge operation called the Storm. The Storm is, and I quote from the Britannica article, An attack on the deep state officials responsible for the cannibalistic satanic pedophile cabal invoked by Pizzagate. Pizzagate is referencing the Comet Ping Pong Pizza. So the deep state is just people who are manipulating the government from the shadows. So my best comparison that I would make off the top of my head would be the Illuminati. Also, according to Britannica, the cabal includes Hollywood, the Democratic Party, and also the deep state. So basically, anybody these people don't like. Q will then go on throughout the years giving alleged top secret information to the masses and call them Q drops. And honestly, it gets way deeper than that. And I really don't want to get into it because the main important part is the satanic cannibal child sex trafficking cabal thing. That's the important part. To summarize and boil it down to its base components, and pay attention here, this will come up later on the test. There is a conspiracy theory that a person or a group of people named Q has top security clearance knowledge about a cannibalistic, satanic, pedophile cabal that involves Hollywood, the Democratic Party, and the deep state. And there is an operation called The Storm that Trump will enact to get rid of these people. And that's really as far as I'm going to go with this QAnon garbage, because believe me, it just keeps going and going and going straight into the depths of hell. But I wanted you to have a tiny grasp of what QAnon is at its base level. Just keep it alive in your mind and think about it as we talk about Haunting Adeline. One last thing that we need to touch on, and then I promise we'll get into the book. I promise. But there are some anti-Semitic tropes in this book, and I wanted to touch on the biggest one that I know. However, I am not an expert in anti-Semitism. So for all I know, I could be blowing this out of proportion. However, this is a trope I do know about, so I'm going to discuss it with the class anyway. Let's talk briefly about blood libel. Blood libel refers to the tall tale of Jewish people needing to drink the blood of children, namely Christian children, for some kind of ritual. Not only is this horrendously, horrifically, absolutely, astronomically not true, but murder is forbidden by Jewish faith. And I don't know if you've ever looked into what makes eating animals kosher, but generally, you have to drain all of the blood before they consume it. They're not supposed to have any blood. Where did this come from? People are awful, man. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. People have been using this as a justification to be shitty to Jewish people for literally centuries. This trope of drinking children's blood is rooted in anti-Semitism, and this is something that does come up in the book. This trope of drinking children's blood is anti-Semitic, even if the person who's using this trope doesn't know it yet. It's not a good trope to use. Stop using it in your horror. Think of something better. Now, there are two versions of this book running around, and apparently the first edition, allegedly, apparently, don't sue me, has a lot more anti-Semitism in it. When called out for the anti-Semitism, Carlton apparently pulled her book, edited it, and then re-released it. By the way, she's self-published. I have the second edition that still has drinking children's blood in it. I did not do a lot of research on H.D. Carlton because honestly, I don't care. It's not the author's fault that this book was recommended to a minor, which, might I remind you, is the whole reason I'm making this video. But I will say, I will likely never read anything from this author. We have done it. We have gotten through all of what I wanted to talk about before actually getting in and talking about this dumb book. This is going to be a spoilery play-by-play of my thoughts of this book. And it is going to be included, but not limited to, my problems with how it's written, the events in the book, the characters, all of it. everything. So please prepare yourself for some psychic damage. Let's touch on two things that aren't particularly plot related that really irk me, so that way I don't spend the entire whole review talking about it. I hate the way this is written. I had to sit down and call this writing something because I couldn't quite put my finger on why I don't like it, but hopefully I can explain to you. I'm calling this writing method Stinger Zinger. Let me read you a couple examples. I'm just flipping to random pages because I didn't actually write down any pages, but I did highlight every time this happened. So we'll start with this one. I don't even have a mailbox. My house is too far from the road, so my mail is just left on my front doorstep. Shouldn't a stalker know that? What a shitty little shadow. I hold the air in my lungs, careful not to make a sound should I hear the noise again. Stillness settles around the house. Too still. My fingers clutch the duvet on my lap as my heart rate increases. Someone is outside my door. That's a full sentence. But how? How the fuck did he make it past the alarm system? Do you see what I'm talking about? You have paragraph, one-liner. And sometimes it's paragraph, one-liner, 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 one-liner. You can use this stinger zinger kind of writing method in your book. It's fine. It can be used for dramatic effect, but it is used so often in this book that it makes me mad. What is a paragraph? The author certainly doesn't know, and neither does their editor. When you use this sort of writing method all the time, it makes your entire book sound melodramatic. There is nothing you can say now that gives the punch you think I want from this statement, because this kind of writing style where everything is dramatic all the time takes away from the drama. You could slim down this book a good 40 to 50 pages if you just combined sentences together. Please research a paragraph, I beg of thee. Please! I cannot tell you how many times I wrote in this book asking if the author knew what a paragraph was. All of these one-liners or one-sentence paragraphs, sometimes you'll get 3 or 4 in a row. And if you, it would read so much better if you just put the paragraph, if you just made it a paragraph. It's kind of like the author thinks that the paragraph is what you use instead of a period. There is another thing that is more of a personal ick of mine, and I'm sure that other people don't have this problem, but I love show, don't tell. Obviously, you can tell me some things. That's fine. But don't tell me everything. You want me to think this person is a badass. Show me that they are a badass. Don't sit around and tell me they are a badass and then do not prove it. Do not talk the talk if you cannot walk the walk. Just show me something that I can interpret. Let me have my own opinions. This book is tell some more, hammer it in. I must be dumb. I'm sure I'm going to bring up examples as we go through together on this journey, you and I. So bear that in mind. That might be a constant complaint I have. It might not be. I don't know. Now we shall get into this book. First, let me read you the back of this book. The Manipulator. I can manipulate the emotions of anyone who lets me. I will make you hurt, make you cry, make you laugh and sigh. But my words don't affect him, especially not when I plead for him to leave. He's always there, watching and waiting, and I can never look away. Not when I want him to come closer. Shadow. I didn't mean to fall in love, but now that I have, I can't stay away. I'm mesmerized by her smile, by her eyes, and the way she moves, the way she undresses. I'll keep watching and waiting until I can make her mine. And once she is, I'll never let her go, not even when she begs me to. The back is talking about the two main characters. The manipulator is the female love interest, and the shadow is the male love interest. For the manipulator, the main girlie is not a manipulator. She's an author, and that's sort of what the back is referencing. The back is referencing the fact that she uses her words in her books to make people feel a certain way, but she's not really shown to do that physically, if that makes sense. And the shadow, fine, whatever, that sort of fits. I wish that instead of the manipulator and the shadow, it was instead cat and mouse, because this is called the cat and mouse duet. So why aren't they just called cat and mouse? You really missed out on a theming here, and I'm quite upset about it. And now we have the important note, which is technically the first page of the book minus, the cover, and these are all fictitious and this was copyrighted and all that other stuff. So let me read you this note. Important note. None of these conspiracies derive from a belief in anti-Semitism or QAnon, but from my own demented imagination, common conspiracies in the media, and many occult movies my dad used to watch growing up. This book ends on a cliffhanger. The contents are very dark, with triggering situations, such as non/dubcon between the main characters, graphic violence, human trafficking, stalking, child trafficking, child sacrifice, mention of child death, and explicit sexual situations. There are also particular kinks such as gunplay, somnophilia, bondage, and degradation. This book was previously taken down due to the warning, but you can also find them in reviews on my website, or feel free to message me directly. Your mental health matters. This is literally our first impression of the book. I read the back to you and that was fine. And then you read this important notice and the author is already defending herself. What's going on? I wasn't suspicious until right now that this is anti-Semitic and or has QAnon in it. Generally well done dark romance also has a good list of trigger warnings, so that way you can consume the content responsibly. I don't know why the choice of triggering situations was used. Just put trigger warnings, semicolon, and then list out anything that could possibly be triggering. Don't be weird about it. We open on a prologue that really sets the scene. She has a stalker. She knows that he is out there and she is into it. And you know what? Good for her. You know what I would be more into? If ghosts actually mattered in this story. Legend says, or rather Nana says, that the house caught fire and killed the construction workers during the building phase. I haven't been able to find any news articles on the unfortunate event, but the souls that haunt the manor reek of despair. Nana always told me grandiose stories that wrung eye rolls from my parents. Mom never believed anything Nana said, but I think she just didn't want to. Sometimes I hear footsteps at night. They could be from the ghosts of the workers who died in that tragic fire 80 years ago, or they could be from the shadow that stands outside my house, watching me, always watching me. You must be thinking, ghosts? Is this house haunted? Yes! Is it going to be important to the story? No! We abandoned the fact that there are ghosts, canonical ghosts, hanging out in the house where most of this book takes place. Much to my dismay. Despite my future knowledge of knowing that ghosts have no bearing on the plot, I think this is a strong prologue. It sets up for the stalker romance we're embarking. We only used like 4 or 5 instances of the word that we probably shouldn't be using. Good job. The book opens up to our main character, Adeline, or Addie for short. She is currently driving and talking to her mother. She's about 20 something or so, and she also writes books for a living and has traveled the world or something, and is now going to settle down in her dead grandma's house. manor, mansion, whatever. It's located smack dab in the PNW, and she's also probably really heckin' rich. So every girl's dream. Her mother does not like her, and it's very, very, very apparent and explicitly said, basically from page 1. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like Addie either. I mean, she's fine, but she's fine. I wouldn't spend time with her as a real person, but she's an idiotic, self-aware alcoholic who makes the dumbest decisions. I just hate being inside her head. I hate that she's the protagonist. Her mother is encouraging Addie to not live at the Parsons Manor, which is what Grand's house is called, because Mom doesn't want Addie to turn into a worthless pile of dog dookie like Gran. I don't like Addie's mom either. Parsons Manor is perched on the cliffside and looks like every gothic haunted house you've ever heard about. But don't get too excited, because the ghosts don't matter, despite the name being Haunting Adeline. The poor manor is run down, and our rich protagonist is going to throw money at the TLC that this house needs in order to get it back into tip-top shape, and she spends the rest of the chapter frolicking around, debating on what shade of black everything's going to be. And you think I'm joking, but I am not. Everything in this house is black. I saw a window and I want to paint it black. Did I mention that Addie is an author? Well, now she's at a book signing and she has a personal assistant named Marietta. And this is the last that we will see of Marietta for the rest of this book. And I have beef with this. What do you mean that you have an assistant that you gave us by name and you don't ever talk about her for the rest of this like 500 to 600 page tome? Why didn't you just make Addie's best friend also her personal assistant? Addie's best friend we'll talk about later. The book signing is not really all that important other than to make me mad about Marietta, but also to give Addie's perspective of the first time that the male love interest sees Addie. So obviously we're going to talk about this a little later. Instead of Marietta, the assistant, being our best friend, Addie has a different best friend named Daya, who is a hacker by trade. I'm not for sure. I didn't keep this in my notes, but I am 95% sure that every time we have a scene with Daya and Addie together, they are drinking copious amounts of alcohol. I fear for their livers. And also, they should sign up for AA because this amount of drinking is frightening. We are now at a bar, and Daya brings up the fact that Addie has not been laid in a while. So, do you know what Daya does? She steals Addie's phone, sexts a boy named Grayson, and then sets up a booty call, all while Addie tells her to stop. And this is not going to be the only time that everyone around Addie ignores her boundaries. I also hate Daya. This is disgusting. I hate it. Gross. This is the first scene we have with Daya, and I already hate her with every fiber of my being. You explicitly, why did you do this? Add this to the list of questions I have for the author, which is, what are paragraphs and what are boundaries? So do you think that Daya set up Addie with a good booty call? No, of course not, because Daya sucks. We're having terrible sexy time with this Grayson fellow, and Addie is actually actually quite horrible in this scene. Instead of telling this guy, hey, I actually do not want to have sexy times, she goes through with the booty call by inviting the guy to her haunted house and then spends the entire time thinking about how she doesn't want to have sexy times with him and how she wishes a spider would go down his shirt or blah, blah, blah. I don't like Grayson. You'd be so hard pressed to find anybody that I like in this book. But Addie is being a horrible, horrible person. Just tell the boy to go or don't show up. Daya forced Addie to go on this booty call and she can't even set up a good one. This is whack. Addie is in luck because instead of a spider, someone does a police knock on the door, interrupting the already rancid mood. When Addie goes to check to see if anything is there because Grayson is too chicken shit to go take a look, she sees no one. And that is actually kind of creepy. Addie also thinks it's kind of creepy. So she goes and tells Grayson, who stripped all of his clothes during the time it took for her to walk to the door and then walk back. And she says, yo, I'm actually not in the mood. So can you go? He loses his temper and just, okay, listen to this. You're such a bitch, Addie. All you do is give me blue balls and I'm sick of it. I'm done with you in this creepy fucking house, he seethes, pointing a finger at me. And you're an asshole. Get the fuck out of my house, Grayson. His eyes widen with shock at first and then narrow into slits, brimming with fury. He turns, cocks his arm back and sends his fist flying into the dry wall. A gasp is ripped from my throat when half of his arm disappears, my mouth parting in shock and disbelief. Since I'm not getting yours, thought I'd create my own hole to get into tonight. Fix that, bitch, he spits. Still sporting only one sock and an armful of clothes, he storms off. You dick, I rage, stomping towards the large hole in my wall he just created. The front door slams a minute later from below. I hope the mysterious person is still out there. Let the asshole get murdered, wearing a single sock. So you mean to tell me that Daya not only gave us a booty call to someone who's bad at sexy times, but also forced her to go on a booty call with a man-child? Disgusting. And that is the first chapter. I hate this chapter for a lot of reasons. First, it sets up ghosts. And they're not even the point of the novel. And worse, they aren't even important, which is tragic. Second, Daya sucks. Big time. I could never be friends with someone who does this kind of garbage. And third, Addie sucks. If you don't want to have a booty call with someone, then tell them. Don't invite them to your house. Oh, golly. I'm not going to be recounting every chapter as in this is chapter 3, this is chapter 4. I'm more just going to start talking about the plot in a free-form sort of fashion. But I thought that these first 2 chapters were really important. So let's go to chapter 2 and meet our main male love interest. And who is our main male love interest? No one other than Zaid. This has to be one of the most cringiest men I've ever read about. And I don't even use the word cringe lightly. I mean that I physically recoil when I have to read from this guy's point of view. He is egotistical, narcissistic, and brags constantly about his moral superiority because of what he does for work. And I despise him. He's awful, and I cannot put into how many words I wish this man would go straight to prison. I will dig the hole myself where he will rot in for the rest of his life. This man is so awful. But, you're going to learn that as I did as we continue this. So let's go. Okay. Get this. This guy, Zaid, is a hacker who goes by Z, and he runs a hacking organization that tracks down pedophile rings. And he recently found a video that points to a satanic child trafficking ring that is made up by politicians, celebrities, and other important people like the lawyer to the president of the United States and the president. This ring does child sacrifices and drinks the children's blood in order to gain powers from something. This whole taking out the satanic pedophile ring isn't a small part of the story. This isn't just Zaid's hobby that he talks about with a little bit of passion. No, this takes up a lot of screen time. Anyway, Zaid is torturing someone. And don't let him tell you he doesn't like it, because he actually does. He likes hurting people. He likes killing people. This guy that Zaid is currently torturing is trafficking children. And Zaid gets his information by doing this. I had already cut off one of his ears, along with ripping 10 of his fingernails, severed both Achilles' heels, a couple stab wounds in specific locations that won't allow the fucker to bleed out too quickly, and too many broken bones to count. Wow, what a good guy. So Zaid kills the child trafficker after getting his information. Good for us, good for him, and good for the world. Now Zaid is going to get a celebratory after torture burger when he notices a bookstore with a lot of people at it. I spared it a single glance before moving on. I don't care about fiction books. I only read the ones that are going to teach me something, particularly about computer science and hacking. By now, there's nothing these books can teach me anymore. I've mastered and then surpassed them. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. What do you mean you don't read fiction? That doesn't make you a morally superior and cooler person when you don't read fiction. It makes you boring. Absolutely dull. What else do you do with your spare time, Zaid? Stare at a wall and lick the lead off the paint? Stop being so pretentious. Zaid is just so unlikable. Oh my God. But despite no fun-loving Zaid starting to walk away from the bookstore, he stops in his tracks, and the rest of the book has to happen. Before me is a picture of an author that's hosting a book signing. She's fucking incredible. Long, wavy, cinnamon hair brushed over dainty shoulders. Creamy ivory skin with freckles dotting her nose and cheeks. Light and sporadic without overwhelming her face. Her eyes are what drew me in. Sultry, slanted eyes. The type that always looks seductive without trying. They're nearly the same color as her hair. A brown so light, it's unusual. One look from this girl and any man would be on their knees. Her lips are pouty and pink, stretched into a radiant smile with straight white teeth. I noted the name below the picture. Adeline Riley. A beautiful name fit for a goddess. She doesn't have the plastic beauty you see lining the magazine rack, though she could have easily made it on one of the covers without Photoshop and surgery. Her features are natural. I've seen a lot of beautiful women, fucked a lot too. But something about her captivates me. It's like a hurricane is on my back, pushing me towards her and leaving no room for resistance. My feet carrying me into the bookstore, my black boots soaking the welcome mat at the entrance. You heard that right. Zaid looked at a poster of Adeline and immediately falls head over heels for her. So he goes inside the bookstores, sees Addie, and has to suppress a groan when she speaks. Oh my God. He decides then and there, I'm going to keep her. If she doesn't want me, I don't care. She's mine. Blah, blah, blah. He doesn't even have a conversation with her. He doesn't even get close enough to smell her perfume. He just decides that he's going to be our problem for the next 500 pages. I'm going to stop us just real quick. I've got two things. One, the whole falling in love without ever actually physically meeting the girl is just so creepy, so weird. I don't like it. Makes my skin crawl. Just ugh. And number two, he is way too horny. Like as you read the book, I'm not going to tell you, but he's like almost constantly like about ready to bust out of his pants, and he really should go to the doctor for that, because that sounds wildly unhealthy. Continuing, listen to this nonsense. My head turns like one of those creepy bitches in an Exorcist movie. Slow. But instead of a smile, I'm sure I'd look like I've just found that there is evidence the earth is actually flat or some shit. Because that's also laughable. Oxygen, words, coherent thoughts, all that shit escapes me when I get my first look at Adeline Riley in the flesh. Shit, she's even more exquisite in person. The sight of her has my knees weakening and my pulse racing. I don't know if God really exists. I don't know if mankind has ever walked on the moon. Nor do I know if parallel universes exist. But what I do know is that I just found the meaning of life sitting behind a table with an awkward smile. For a guy who reads no fiction, he's sure a fucking idiot, isn't he? What do you mean? You don't know if mankind's ever walked on the fucking moon? What do you mean? I hate Zayd so much. He's so dumb. Thank God he doesn't believe the earth is flat, because I don't think I could contain my hatred any longer if that was the case. But you don't think we've ever been to the moon? Are you insane? Are you... Okay, moving on. He spends the rest of the second chapter being weird, creepy, hasn't even had a conversation with her, doesn't even know if she has bad breath, and he's like, I'm already addicted to her. Okay, whatever. We're going to be going a little faster in terms of plot recounting, and I'm not going to tell you what chapter it is. So, be prepared! So, you remember when Grayson punched a hole in Addie's wall? Well, behind that hole is a mysterious object that's behind a painting. It's a safe. It's a safe. So Addie gets into the safe and finds the journal entries of her great-gran who was murdered in the 40s named Gigi. I'm going to talk about that later. Just hold on to that in your brain. We skip a little bit after finding the journal, and Addie goes to bed. And she wakes up because something goes bump in the night. It isn't ghosts, though. She gets up and investigates. How very horror protagonist of you. She sneaks around her own house, terrified, and eventually makes it to the kitchen, where she finds a rose with no thorns on the stem. Letting out a shaky breath, I pluck the flower from the countertop and roll it in my fingers. The thorns have been severed from the stems, and I get the strange inclination that was done purposely to save my fingers from being pricked. Shut up. Remember when I said that I liked the whole show Don't Tell? Well, don't tell me your stupid inclinations. Let me have my stupid inclinations. Thank you. So Daya comes over and they are drinking copious amounts of alcohol, as they always do. And now we're going through Gran's things. My idiot friend is holding the sides of the lacy underwear and flapping her tongue provocatively, or what's supposed to be provocative. I'm far more disturbed than anything right now. Please stop. She rolls her eyes to the back of her head dramatically, mimicking an orgasm, which ends up looking more like an exorcism to me. You're being entirely inappropriate right now. What if my Nana can see you? My hatred knows no bounds. Do you have no respect? Daya is the freaking worst. Just do a little striptease. That'll scare him away, I deadpan. A whoosh of air next to my ear sends my hair dancing, and a second later, a roll of duct tape hits the wall in front of me. I leave the room cackling, the sound of Daya's cursing following me out of the room. She knows damn well that she's beautiful. That's why I tend to tease her about being the opposite. Someone's gotta humble that sexy bitch once in a while. She'll get too big for this earth if I don't. Excuse me, what? If your friends aren't hyping you up, don't keep them around. In no world should you be teasing your friend about their looks or their beauty in a negative way and being like, if someone doesn't bring her down a peg, she'll get too big. What are you even talking about? You horrible, horrible bitch. Moral of the story, don't be friends with Addie and don't be friends with Daya. They both suck. And these two just deserve each other, I guess. Oh, yeah, by the way, there's a mysterious whiskey glass downstairs because someone broke into the house and drank Grandpa's whiskey. I wonder who that could be. Next day, Thea is gone. And Addie is just standing over a cliff thinking about jumping. As you do, I guess. Girl, are you okay? Because me and the guy who's working on your house that you are paying to work on your house, we're both very concerned right now. His eyes bounce between me and the edge of the cliff I'm standing on, emanating nervous energy. He thinks I'm going to jump. And as I continue to just stare at him, I realize I'm not giving him any reason to think otherwise. Still, I don't move. Instinctively, I take a step back towards the cliff's edge. The man's brown eyes widen into saucers, and he immediately halts and puts up his hands, as if he's trying to keep me from going over with the force. He's just trying to help, not scare me, and I've gone and scared the shit out of this man in return. I suppose I have been this whole time. What an asshole. Anyway, so to go into this situation a little deeper, rich author girl is giving her house a facelift and hired a team of people to do so. When she comes back from standing over a cliff and scaring that poor worker, we find out that there's a whole bunch of red roses without thorns just strewn about everywhere. Also, Addie lets us know that we've been finding roses inside our locked cars, inside our locked house, inside of pretty much everywhere. We find a note in the roses that read, "I'll be seeing you soon, little mouse." Shut up, Zaid. I will say this. Addie has been trying to go to the police about this. So at least she's doing a couple things right. Now Mom is here being weird and rubbing it in my face that this book is not about ghosts. And she talks about 5 guys dying in a house fire and how Gigi, great gran, was murdered. So I guess I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to go ahead and spoil 90% of Gigi's storyline because I think it's really, really dumb and I want to get it out of the way. In the 1940s, Gigi gets a stalker named Ronaldo who works for the mob. She falls in love with him and surprise, surprise, it ruins her marriage. Her husband gets into drinking and gambling and gets into a lot of trouble with the mob. And then Ronaldo's boss, through advice of Ronaldo, hires John to do bookkeeping and keeps John from sinking into the depths of poverty and gambling. John being mad at Gigi and Ronaldo being a stalker and all of this just culminates into her mysterious murder. And now Addie is going to try and spend 90% of the book trying to solve the murder to prove that it was her stalker, Ronaldo. Spoiler alert, it wasn't Ronaldo. I will tell you who killed her later because it's not relevant right now. I love me a good murder mystery. I really do. Agatha Christie has my heart. But this mystery is just so inherently flawed. Like, who is Gigi and why should I care about her? Why? The only emotional attachment Addie has to this lady is that she is related to her, but she hasn't met her. And they both have stalkers that they eventually hooked up with. This mystery would have been so much better if it was Gran who got murdered, or even Addie's mother that got murdered. Just someone that Addie has an emotional attachment to drive forward her wanting to do this, other than she also has a stalker, and so she has to prove that all stalkers are killer, evil, and bad by proving that Gigi's stalker killed her. This whole murder mystery could have just been an email and not a whole extensive thing with journal entries, which, by the way, the journal entries do not look like journal entries by someone who journals. I would know. I am someone who journals. Gran has this signature red lipstick and she kisses all the pages. And why? Why would you do that? That's really weird and I don't like it. If anything, if you are really attached to having these journal entries, I think either the journal should be something you could read in the entirety at the end of the book, or even slapped as bonus content on a website. It doesn't need to be in this book at all, and could have been used to cut many pages. What's Zaid doing right now? Not that we care. He's cosplaying as Batman, and he's going around and frolicking and taking out the skin trade all by himself, so nothing super important. He is a self-righteous, untouchable action star who mentally jerks himself off every chance he gets, thinking about how his line of work of saving children from the skin trade absolves him from any crimes he's going to commit. Spoiler alert, it doesn't absolve him from anything. He's just a terrible person who's doing one good thing, so that way he can think he's a good person. Back to Addie. Addie is now at a bar with Daya because we need to go drink, of course. And we run into these two men called Arch and Max. Arch is interested in some smexy times with Addie, if you know what I mean. And Addie is actually super into it. And that's when Zaid texts her this. Sneaking off with random men, little mouse. If I catch his hands anywhere near you, they'll end up in your mailbox by morning. Okay, let's talk about it. So far, Addie has no confirmation that Zaid is a killer. We as the audience know, but Addie, no clue. All Addie really knows about Zaid at this moment is that he can get into locked places and he relocks places whenever he leaves, and he tosses about flowers like a little flower boy and drinks expensive whiskey. There really isn't a reason that Addie shouldn't go on this booty call with Arch that she wants to go do, but on the other hand, she's also legitimately terrified that he might actually do something to Arch. She's taking this guy seriously. So what do you think she does? She has sexy times with Arch at her house in a room completely filled with windows. Of course. Not that I had much of an ability to like Addie as a protagonist, but this is when I really started just despising Addie. If she had disregarded this text as a prank, if she read this text and went, this guy is freaking crazy, and then went and did stuff with Arch, I would have been fine. She takes this random man for a booty call in her house in the most revealing area and risks his life. We learn later that Arch is actually a terrible person, but Addie doesn't know that. We don't know that. And it doesn't matter. Addie willingly put someone in danger. Are you trying to get this guy killed? Are you taking the stalker seriously? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, enjoy this smut scene because it's the only consensual one we will get for a long time. All right, so our sexy times gets interrupted by, you guessed it, someone pounding on the door like the police. Arch is a brave boy, unlike Grayson, so he actually goes to investigate the noise. Addie waits for a little bit and then goes outside to see what happened, and Arch disappeared. He is gone, but not without a trace. Arch is gone, and in Arch's place is a bloody rose. And she gets a text. I will read it to you. Don't feel guilty, baby. I don't make idle threats. So consider this a lesson learned. This is straight up a horror novel. We really missed the mark on this. A few tweaks and you could have written an extremely disturbing book, because this is insane and it could have had ghosts. Tragic. Addie calls the cops to let everyone know that Arch has been kidnapped, and that's when we find out that Arch is really a terrible, horrible person with ties to equally terrible, horrible people who are probably going to target Addie now that they are going to obviously find out that she had a stalker who threatened her. So my problem with Arch being the worst of the worst is that it's literally only there to justify Zaid actually going and killing this guy. instead of just committing to the fact that Zaid is an actual terrible, horrible human being. Zaid hasn't had a full conversation with this woman yet. He has only texted her vague threats, threw flowers around, and drank her whiskey. He doesn't know her yet. He's just vaguely threatening, very possessive, and extremely obsessive from a distance. So we find out that Arch's family is like some kind of mafia type, and Zaid hasn't taken the time to go take them out because he's a megalodon and they're just little sharks or whatever. And he's Billy Badass, by the way, and he goes and kills this entire mafia family. This man and his family are small crumbs in the grand scheme of things. His family gets involved in petty crimes and sees themselves as Seattle's mafia, but they are ants compared to the fucking dinosaurs walking around the city. I've left them alone because they're bigger fish to fry than low-life criminals who think they're crime lords. Their threat to humanity is minuscule compared to the people I track and kill, and until they start trading in more than just powder, they've never been on my radar. Until now. There's no stopping Addie from opening her mouth and telling the cops she has a stalker. Doesn't matter that I've destroyed all evidence of her police reports. By the way, he's been destroying all of the evidence of her police reports. And if the Talaveras get wind of that, they will kill Addie for something out of her control. It doesn't matter that the family has enemies. Any possibility will be eliminated when they find out that the heir of the Talavera Empire has been murdered. So tonight, I'll rid the Seattle of the little pests that have been congregating so I can focus back on bigger things. Making Adeline mine and dismantling the pedophile rings. Look, Zaid cannot be taking out pedophile rings every single workday. So why isn't he just also taking out crime like Batman? He's already cosplaying as Batman. He might as well go and clean up the streets of Gotham or something. This whole setup pays off later, and it doesn't even pay off in a good way. The setup being that you remember the guy Max? Well, Max hooks up with Daya, and then all of Arch's family gets murdered, and Max is very upsetty about it. So Max is then going to go do some shenanigans later after he connects the dot that Addie is the reason why Arch and his family were murdered. This setup really does leave a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, it has the ingredients for a great setup. Can you imagine if Zaid hadn't been talking to Addie this whole time and, in fact, isn't very possessive and is like, I'm going to do some research into this Arch guy that she is now hooking up with, and then finds out that he's actually a horrible, terrible person. So he does what he thinks is the right thing and rescues him from her. And she takes it the wrong way because of course she would. You've been stalking her this whole time. That would have been a fun setup. But no, we don't get that. I have a whole section dedicated to fixing this book that we're going to be talking after we're done discussing the book. So I will put a pin on this and we'll discuss it later. Anyway, so we go back to Daya and Addie and they find Arch's hands in a box. Yikes. Zaid lets Addie know that if she keeps calling the cops, he's going to become a cop killer too. So romantic. We're going to flash forward beyond everyone learning that Zaid just killed a whole family for funsies and to some ghost shenanigans because that's way more interesting to me. The ghost isn't doing anything that important. It's just flipped over a journal and showed us an important entry that we apparently needed to see. And that's it. But I just wanted to highlight the ghost section. After the ghost shenanigans, Addie brings Daya into the fold and lets her know that Gigi was murdered and that Addie thinks it was probably the stalker. We have a couple of interactions between Zaddy. Daddy. We have a couple of interactions with Zaid and Addie that I'm going to lightly go through. The first one, he is creepily standing outside of her bedroom door and then just goes away. Yikes. That was another opportunity that he could have taken to have a singular conversation with her, but instead chose to be a horror movie villain. Then there was the other interaction. He's smoking out in her front lawn and she just gets so pissed off that she stupidly rushes out there without a weapon to try and tell him to, I don't know, do something. And he doesn't say anything. Again, could have used this for any conversation. No, how are yous? Do you like watching movies? What's your favorite color? Do you like walks on the beach? None of that. Okay, so Zayd is now watching a child sacrifice happening and notices that there are 4 senators taking part in this blood ritual thing. And he watches the video over and over to try to get clues, which cannot be good for your mental health. Then it's time to get creepy because we are in his point of view and he is a very, very creepy man. So here's a fun quote. "The only predator I'll allow in her house is myself." What? Hi, Addie. What are you doing? Oh, you're being haunted by a ghost of a woman in a white dress with tight blonde curls. That's definitely Gigi. Ah, so cool. The ghost leads us to a note that someone wrote admitting that they covered up Gigi's murder because someone told them to. So cool. Another Zayd and Addie interaction. Don't worry. The only thing he said, the more you disobey me, the harder your punishment. Skipping over Daya and Addie drinking while Daya figures out that whoever is breaking into Addie's house is using untraceable bullshit. Just, we're skipping some stuff. You remember the sexual assault trigger that I've brought up earlier? Well, it's going to happen right now, and it's going to continuously happen. If you get triggered by these kinds of things, please skip them. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because that's gross, but they do happen, and I'm going to talk about it. So this is the first time that the 2 leads have a face-to-face interaction where they both are speaking, and it is not great, not cool. 0 out of 10 belongs in hell. Zayd got into Addie's room and is standing on the balcony menacingly. In the bookstore, I only saw portions of his face. At the time, he seemed mildly attractive, but now I see those pieces as a whole. He's devastating. His right eye darker than midnight sky, and the other the exact opposite. His left eye is so bleached of color it's nearly white. The scar starting from the middle of his forehead slashing straight down through his white eye into the middle of his cheek is something I haven't been able to forget since I saw him in the bookstore. Despite the ugly scar, it only serves to heighten his utter beauty. A jawline so sharp he could cut diamonds with it. A straight, aristocratic nose. Sorry, I didn't know how to read that. Full lips and short black hair, just long enough to run your fingers through. This is so wrong. So wrong. I shouldn't be attracted to a stalker. His presence is so overwhelming it feels as if he's 10 feet tall, with a shadow crawling up the ceiling slithering towards me. This room feels tiny with him in it. I feel tiny with him in it. Huh? Oh. Hello? Yeah, 2008 called and they want their emo boy back. Honestly, if he wasn't so damn cringy, and he wasn't a tryhard, and he wasn't so annoying, and if he wasn't Zayd, I'd probably think he'd be hot too. I mean, come on, I'm a sucker for emo boys as well. Unfortunately, he sucks. He's awful. I would rather burn him alive than speak to him. Addie has a knife. Too bad she doesn't do anything with it. She tried stabbing him, but he took the knife away. And don't worry, he's immune to pain, as we soon discover when she, stabbed him through the hand or something. So he disarms her and pulls out another knife. And then we play the most dangerous game of hide and seek. Stakes. If he finds Addie, he will punish her for having a normal reaction to stalkers and men who kill people. And if he doesn't find her, he'll leave her alone forever. This does not feel weighted. I want him to leave forever and be arrested, but we'll try to win. Unfortunately, we don't win. And when he finds her, she runs, as anybody would in this circumstance. The next sequence is very difficult to read. because you're reading legitimate sexual assault. She tells him, don't touch her and don't do this. She fights back. It doesn't matter. He whips out a gun, then proceeds to assault her with that gun, which in reality, that would cause a lot of internal damage, but we're kind of hand waving it over, I think. After he's done assaulting her, he just leaves her there. Discarded. No aftercare. Nothing. Thrown away like a piece of trash. This book was recommended to a minor! Most of the sexual encounters with Zaid are not consensual. And yes, there are people who do have those types of fantasies, and I most certainly do not. I also know that this is tagged with non-consensual or dubious consent. But good God, with a gun? Jesus Christ. Moving on. So Arch's friend Max, remember him? Well, he had one of his guys follow Daya, who took the box with the hands, to go bury it. Because I don't know why. And they dig up the box that Daya buried and figured out that that was Arch's hands in the box. And we're like, okay. And this is going to be a common occurrence for the rest of this damn book. Zaid is quite literally the sole reason everything goes to shit in Addie's life, and he's going to try to gaslight her and us that it's not. No, he is the reason she is put into danger at all times. Every single instance is his fault. I just want to reiterate how much I hate Zaid. He is not just cringy, but he's actually insanely entitled and obviously the worst person ever. So here's a quote. I deprived myself last time, refused to touch her with my own hands when she hasn't earned that from me yet. But watching that gun slide in and out of her was just as torturous for me. You raped her. You deserve to be shot. Right here. Right there. Not even 25 pages later, he is assaulting her again! A minor. This was recommended to a fucking minor! Do you want to know what's the worst thing about this guy? The most gear-grinding thing of all? He knows he's taking away her consent while actively fighting against human trafficking, and he doesn't care that he's exactly like those fucking guys. He's exactly like them. I loathe this man with every fiber of my being. I think I'm going to go insane. I have to breathe, or I am going to spontaneously burst into flames. It's actually been a few days since I recorded that last section because it was making me upset and I needed a break. I also had to go pick up my boyfriend from work. So let us continue on. I have to look up where I was in the script, so give me 1 second. My iPad keeps wanting me to update and I refuse. No, thank you. Now that it's been a couple of days and I have some coffee to make myself feel better, let us continue with the rest of this recap. Finally, we have a conversation. So here's an important quote. Let me flip to it. Addie, baby, you're smart for being scared. Very smart. But why would I want you to fall in love with something fake? She snorts. You really think I'd fall in love with you? You're going to act like you wouldn't. If I had approached you in that bookstore and asked you on a date, I'd woo you, charm you, show you your pretty fake smile and treat you like a queen, all while lying to your face. Is that really what you want? Silence greets me again. She can't say no, and she knows it. Why can't you be decent and not feel the need to stalk me? Because I wouldn't be true to myself, little mouse. I love that I scare you. I love that you try to run from me. The push and pull. The cat and mouse game. I fucking love it. And a part of you does too. I want nothing more than to read Ice Planet Barbarians again. Monster boyfriends are so much better than this. So much better. I have mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. Addie has been reporting Zaid to the police, and Zaid, in response, have been deleting all of the police reports because he's a cool hacker man action hero. Addie lets Zaid know that Max is on to her because she was the last one that Arch was seen alive with. And he's like, don't worry about it, baby. I'm scarier than he is. And yes, I would agree. You did rape her, and Max is literally just an angry mafia man, and I would rather face him than you. Zaid is like, I'm a cool action hero that can do no wrong and am literally untouchable. So I will go to Max, I will threaten him, and obviously that will have no repercussions whatsoever. However, there were repercussions later. I need to put this somewhere, and I think this is a good place to start mentioning it. But this book is very, very weird about sex workers. I know that Zaid is going into like the den of the worst people, but like every sex worker is dead inside and he's gotta save them and what have you. And I'm here to tell you that there are people who do like to do sex work. Obviously, the sex industry really needs overhaul, changes, industry regulations, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is that some people enjoy doing that, and they make a lot of money doing it, and they don't need to be saved. I don't know, it just gives me a little bit of a weird vibe. Zaid is in a club of some type that is related to the whole child sex trafficking, pedophile, satanic thing that he's been hunting, and he has the audacity to be disgusted by the rapists lining the wall as if he doesn't belong on that wall, as if he isn't a rapist. Zaid goes and approaches a poker table that has one of the senators that was in that video he was watching earlier, and the senator's name is Mark Williams. Zaid is hoping that he can become buddies with Mark Williams, so that way he can infiltrate the satanic cult that doesn't have a name yet, but I shall tell you, it is called the Society. I have another irk, but it's a little bit more specific to me because I used to work in a casino. Mark tells some random guy to skedaddle so that way Zaid could sit down, and he folds a royal flush. Excuse me? This man happened to have the rarest hand in poker. So I'm going to go over poker just real quickly, okay? Because this really bothers me. Because the game's not explained. All it says is that he put his hand on the table and it was going to be a royal flush. I have beef. I have so much beef, it's a cow. If you're playing poker with a group of buddies, which this seems like, one person's going to be the dealer and the others are going to be the ones playing against each other. You have the first three cards, and then you turn another card, and then you turn another card. When he folds his hand, what part of the game did he fold his hands? And you never fold your hand upwards. You never put the two cards that you're holding on to make your hand. You never fold it upwards. You're folding it downwards. So that way the rest of the game can go peacefully. This is such a dumb, stupid little detail that I hate is in here, because you could have said any hand and I wouldn't have cared. A royal flush. Do you know what a royal flush is? It is an ace, king, queen, jack, and a 10. 5 cards, and they're all the same suit. So for example, they're all diamonds or they're all hearts, and you don't just get that hand in a game. In order for Zaid to know that that was a royal flush, he would have need to have seen the royal flush hand. Does that mean that all of the cards are out? Are all of the cards flipped over so we know what hand it is? Did Mark really tell a guy to skedaddle during the paying phase of a poker game? Winning a royal flush hand is a big deal for a big reason. Why is it a royal flush? You could have just said he had a straight flush. He had a full house. He had a 3 of a kind. Why did you have to go to the highest hand in poker? I have to calm down. No one cares about the poker thing. It's just me. It's just me. Out of everything in this entire book, this is the one thing that ruined my immersion so hard, because the more I think about it, the more I ruminate, the more I stew upon this stupid little detail, I get more and more pissed off. I might need to take another 7-day break. Zaid chooses an alias, Zach, because he is an idiot. I have no idea how he has survived taking down giant pedophile rings thus far. He plays poker with Mark, and then he decides that he's going to rescue one of the workers who looks a little bit like Addie. Big whoop, look at this hero, moving on. Addie tells Daya not about the first non-consensual encounter, but the second non-consensual encounter with Zaid. I understand why she wouldn't go into detail about the first one, because it is gnarly. Have I ever mentioned how much I just don't like Daya? Let me tell you how I would react if someone told me this. If my bestie, I'm looking at my beautiful bestie right here, right now, she's right in front of me, and you are a security camera watching. If my best buddy was like, Ruthie, this happened to me, I would be like, I'm gonna fucking kill him. I am not a very confrontational person, but I do end conflict. That's kind of how I view it. And if my friend came up to me about even just one non-consensual encounter, I have guns and I will go to jail for manslaughter. At least they feed you in prison. Daya is currently responding to how Zaid said, I'm stalking you so that way you don't fall in love with a fake version of me. That's what Daya is responding to. I lift my head, a frown on my face. Yes, he said he didn't want me to fall in love with something fake. He pretty much said that he's showing me who he really is instead of lying to me about it. The fact that he thinks he can make me fall in love with him in the first place goes to show how deranged he is. That's oddly nice, but really fucked up. There's something wrong with him, but we knew that from the chopped off hands, Daya said. I snort. Yeah, just a bit. Have you, asked him about that? I nod. Yes, he basically plays his usual macho man act and said not to worry about it and that he'd take care of it. If this was happening to my bestie, I would be livid and unstoppable. I don't care that Zaid is an untouchable action figure. Daya does point out to Addie, whilst they are conversing, that the reason why Addie wants to find Gigi's murderer is because she wants to prove that stalkers are bad. As if we needed to prove that? As if we needed a murder to prove that watching, following, and raping someone was a bad thing. Addie has a few realizations. 1, she finds thrill-seeking sexy, or something to that effect. 2, Zaid was in the right for essaying her and stalking her and making her life a living hell, because if she didn't, she'd fall in love with a lie. I don't think that is how it works. 3, she doesn't want to find Gigi's murderer because she wants to prove that all stalkers are bad. She wants to solve the murder for her dead grandmother. If my eyes could roll any farther, they would roll out of my skull. Daya finds a photo from the 1940s, and we do some Star Trek enhance, and we enhance on a single face in this super grainy photo. This wouldn't happen, by the way. We wouldn't be able to see this guy's face. And we figure out that this guy works for some bad super mafia man in the 40s. Okay. Addie and Daya drink themselves silly. Addie goes to bed drunk, and you know what that means. Dubious consent from fuckface McGee named Zaid. Let's be real, it was just assault. This is like assault number 3. We flash forward to Zaid, who is stalking Addie. Go figure. And she is not at her usual haunts because he would be there because he's stalking her. Instead, she is writing her book in a bar and grill. Well, you see, Mr. Bad Guy Senator Mark Williams is there, and we have to go into the bar and grill because Zaid is standing in front of it. Did I mention that everything bad that ever happens to Addie is Zaid's fault? If he wasn't stalking her right outside of this bar and grill, this senator would have walked past that bar and grill and would have never seen Addie. But no, he sees his buddy Zach and is like, buddy, let's go into this bar and grill. In order for Zaid to try and protect Addie from himself and his own dumb mistakes, he tells Mark that Addie is his girlfriend, but not to bother her because she's working. Mark doesn't listen, so we're going to go bother Addie while she's working. This is when we find out that Mark Williams' dad, Frank, was a sheriff during the time of Gigi's murder and couldn't work the investigation because it was a conflict of interest or something. I'm going to cut to the chase right here. Frank killed Gigi. He was in love with her and then killed her when he figured out that she was cheating on John with someone else. Dead grandma covered up her own mother's murder, and then Ronaldo died of a broken heart. However, I'm not the one telling the story. Mark is, and Mark, in order to give us all the details, is inviting us to go to some fancy rich person ball. Zaid doesn't want to go to this ball, but Addie convinces him to do it anyway. Zaid buys Addie a pretty dress. How nice of him. There is this kind of weird moment where Zaid is smoking. Addie approaches and he like puts the cigarette butt out on the ground and leaves it there. And she is like, pick that up. Don't litter. And he is like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do that. And that's the only thing he ever listens to her about. Not the whole consent thing, but don't you dare litter. Okay, the environment is very important. Addie and Zaid now go to this ball. Addie is very judgmental about all of the rich people decor. And I mean, it is probably very tacky and gaudy. I will give her that. Addie and Zaid work the people of this party with their actual zero amount of charisma. The only reason why they get away with this is because they are the protagonists. Mark lets us know that he will be ready to talk about Gigi in a set amount of time, and then he goes and bounces for that set amount of time. Addie and Zaid don't want to hang out with these rich people anymore, so they go from here to a dark corner over there. Just listen to this quote. You got daddy issues then? I don't have daddy issues, she snaps. I mean, I don't really. My father has always kind of just been there. My mother was such a force that he usually faded in the background. She finishes with another sniff, looking every bit of uncomfortable. Well, if you didn't before, you do now, I drawl, my smile growing as I watch a pretty blush stain her cheeks. Her eyes round and her mouth drops in shock. I want to stick my in it again, just to give it a better use. Her skills are very refined in that area. And thinking of how she refined those skills make me murderous for a brief moment. Are you saying you're my daddy? She sputters out incredulously, bringing my attention back to her. That's right, baby. And you're my good little girl. I croon. Listen, I get it's a thing that people like to be called daddy or whatever. But this man hunts pedophiles. And he just called his girlfriend a little girl. I believe he should hunt himself. Take himself out right now. We have sexy times in a theater while watching a spooky movie because how else are you supposed to have sexy times? And we leave the seats so moist that he leaves a tip for whatever cleaning lady has to find that mess later. Golly. We go meet up with Mark, get our information, and then we book it out of there, as it were. When we talk to Mark, Mark is so shit-faced that he lets us know so much more information than what we bargained for. But bargained for in a good way, it's like a BOGO deal. We find out that the stalker's boss, so like the mafia, head of the mafia ring, helped Addie's grandfather to get a job after he spiraled into alcoholism due to Gigi's infidelity. And we also got a nice nudge in the right direction regarding where the rituals are happening. When we get home from the party, Zayd decides that it's finally time to teach Addie some self-defense so she can defend herself from Zayd's bad, awful, terrible decision-making skills. But because he's so cool, awesome, 80s action hero, untouchable movie star, Addie can't use the self-defense against him as effectively as a regular old Joe. He then gaslight gatekeep girl bosses Addie and tries to convince her that all of her life problems is indeed not his fault. It is his fault, all of them. I can fully and succinctly describe in so much detail, how everything is his fault. The only thing that's not his fault is that she went out clubbing and was going to sleep with Arch. Another day happens, Zayd comes in and he's so sad because he lost a girl during one of his pedophile ring raids. And we get to see the soft side of him. And he doesn't want to have sexy times because he's sad. And he's the only one that can give consent. All right, it's time to hang out with Daya. And Mommy Dearest is calling. Oh, joy. Addie takes this time to tell Mommy Dearest about what she's learned about the murder, including going to Mark Williams' house to get more information. And Mother is extremely brutal. Listen to this. Do you know about Grandpa John's gambling habits I push? Incapable of keeping the hope out of my tone. Unfortunately, she detects it. Why are you asking, Addie? She deflects with a tired sigh. She's always weary when it concerns me. Because I'm interested, okay? I met Frank's son, I admit, Mark. He talked to me about Gigi. He remembered her, and he brought up some interesting things about John's gambling. I don't admit that I'm investigating her case myself. I'd prefer she assumes that we happen to have a connection and spoke on it, nothing more. How did you even come into contact with a man of that social standing? God, Addie, please tell me you didn't sell yourself to him. A fly could buzz into my mouth and I wouldn't notice. My mouth hangs open and all I can feel is hurt. Why? Why would you ever think I'd do something like that? I asked slowly, the heartbreak evident in my tone. I can't keep it hidden. Not when my mother just accused me of being a prostitute. She's silent again, and I wonder if she realized she went too far. Well then, how did you meet him? She finally asked, deflecting a question I'd really like to know the fucking answer to. I sniff, deciding to let it go. It doesn't matter why she thinks it, just that she does. God damn. Mom tells us more puzzle pieces about the murder and then fucks off until later when she decides to give us more exposition. So there is this traveling haunted carnival called Satan's Affair. And guess what? It's in town. So obviously, Daya and Addie are gonna go to it like they do every year. The theme is a spooky childhood theme. So think broken dolls, teddy bears with guts and all that fun stuff. Addie and Daya get in line, and then Mark and a few senators get in line behind us. Ooh, tension. Addie tells Mark that Zayd, who goes by Zach, remember, went to go pee. And then Addie and Daya escape the creepy senators and go in and have a fun haunted time in the fun haunted house. And nothing bad goes wrong. So let's switch over to Zayd's perspective real quick. Zayd is following Mark, and the reason why Zayd is following Mark and the band of bad senators is because they are taking this opportunity to steal people. Why are they doing it at this haunted traveling carnival? I do not know, but this book doesn't know how poker works, so why did I expect anything less? At the very least, the senators didn't have to come in person. They could have used any of their, I'm assuming, leagues of terrible people to go and kidnap other people? Why did they have to show their face? I don't know. There's this side character named Sybil, and she suffers from schizophrenia, I believe. And she has her own short story novella in this universe, because there's multiple things from this universe, by the way. And I believe the gist is that she can see the darkness in people, and then she murders them because she's got crazy intuition. And there are 4 henchmen that may or may not be real. I don't know. I didn't really read the novella. I watched a video on it, so I basically read it. With that in mind, Sybil and Zaid run into each other, and surprise, surprise, they don't like each other at first, despite having basically the same end goal. We're going to skip over this. Just know that eventually Zaid and Sybil team up, and they take out the senators and tie them up, and she goes and hides them while he goes and finds Addie to let her know what's up. Addie is fine, by the way. Nothing bad actually happened to her. In fact, she is going inside the House of Mirrors while Daya hangs out outside to catch her breath, relax, you know, all that good stuff you do after going through a haunted house. Zaid goes inside the haunted house, and Zaid and Addie have consensual sexy times inside this House of Mirror for 2 whole hours. I want to repeat that one more time in case you didn't understand. 2 hours, 120 minutes of sexy time in a House of Mirrors, where Zaid has a band of terrible people tied up with a woman who is bonkers, and Addie, whose best friend is outside and could totally walk in at any moment to try and come and get her. They really could have planned this out better, or maybe have done a quickie, but what do I really expect from the 2 dumbest bitches I've ever met? These people really need to get their goddamn priorities straight. Daya's freaking out because obviously she is. Daya knows her best friend is being stalked, and then she goes missing for 2 hours? Why did Daya not go into the House of Mirrors? I know, it's because Daya is a horrible friend. After we finish our sexy times, Zaid goes to Sybil, and they enact some good old torture, and Mark lets us know where the society is, or some good information, and essentially tries to bargain his way out of being murdered mercilessly. Without mercy is what I meant to say. We have no mercy in these parts, and honestly, good on them, because I wouldn't give this guy any mercy either. We do find out some really fun information. So Mark and his band of merry men were going to steal Addie and traffic her because she has been marked by the society, which I guess doesn't only deal with children. Of course, Zaid is going to use this as an explanation for his awful behavior to Addie for the remainder. You see how much we have left? The remainder of this book. He's going to say some stuff that's like, even if I wasn't here, you were still marked by this society, so likely you would have been kidnapped. I don't know why. And I'm going to stop and just please let me talk about this for 2 seconds. But I don't understand why the society is going to be marking people that have a public face. It is implied that Addie is actually a pretty well-known author, like obviously not Stephen King levels, but she's well-known enough to go to book signings and have traveled, and she has fans. Why would you go and kidnap an author that has a following? You're not going to get away with that. And if you do, you're going to possibly bring forth attention to your terrible skin trade. Okay? And from what I understand, what they are saying to me is that unless Zaid uses Sybil as a scapegoat, the society will up and leave because that is how touchy they are about people knowing about them. So you're going to tell me that you target people who have seen the face of this author? What? Anyway, Zaid leaves so that way Sybil could take the fall for the murders, and that way the cult doesn't uproot themselves and leave. And it does work. Also, we find out that Sybil has been murdering people in tandem with this traveling carnival. And listen, I understand that there would have to be a team of pretty competent law enforcement to connect the dots that the murders are happening in the track of a traveling carnival. But if Sybil does murder these people in the way that it is implied she does, I'm surprised no one has made this connection in the true crime community. One of the things that we learned from Mark is that the club that the society hangs out is called the Savior, and they have a basement where they do all of the cult things. The Savior is also where the president is at. The president? As in the president of the United States. It doesn't say the president of the United States, but what other president could it be? There's also celebrities, A-list actors, politicians, you know. Our new bad guy contact, because remember we killed the last one, is, let me look. Let me just take a look. What's his name? What's his name again? Ah, yes. Daniel Boveri. What's his job? Oh, right. The lawyer for the president. Excuse me? Zaid hypes himself up mentally the entire time that he's talking to Mr. Boveri, and he gets goody-goody with him, and now we're going to go to an initiation. Hooray. We are really gearing up to get to the end of the story, everyone. We've got about 100 pages left. Let's go! Addie, the poor airhead, has figured out that, yes, indeed, Zaid kills people. It's not just a bit. He does, in fact, kill people. She also put together that one of the background scare actors that she noticed was Sybil, who was the scapegoat for the whole murder thing, and she feels pretty icky because she knows that Zaid killed them and blah, 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 blah. She thinks to herself, oh man, I shouldn't be with this insane murderer guy, and just like magic, poof, he shows up. The villain, the antagonist of this goddamn story. He says some insanely abusive things that totally forego her verbal consent. So let's just put our serious caps on, just bop real quick. So essentially what he's saying is that you are saying no, but your body is saying yes. And that is very, very, very harmful, bad thinking. SA is still SA, even if your body is responding positively to it. If you don't want it to happen, then it is SA. Okay? If you say no, no means no. It doesn't matter how your body physically responds to touch or feeling. This is straight up extremely harmful rhetoric. And I try, as you've seen throughout this video, I try very hard to be open to, you know, this sort of like fantasy thing, but them saying, if you don't want it, then why is your body doing this, is so insanely harmful. It is so disrespectful. It is absolutely disgusting. It is full on, straight up manipulation, full stop. Zaid is a very bad man. He is a very abusive man. He is the worst of the worst. And he is unredeemable because he does nothing in this entire book to redeem himself. There is nothing in here that makes Zaid worth it. He is just a horrible, terrible, abusive, manipulative, pedophilic person. He is so awful. And I know we've been doing this video 100 years, so that means for 100 years you've been hearing me screaming from the rooftops how much I hate this man. But good God, he is the absolute worst. Do not let a book like this, if you are reading a book like this and you hear this kind of rhetoric, know that it is wrong. SA is SA when you say no. No means no. All right, serious caps off. Kind of. I've been kind of serious throughout this whole video, haven't I? He says some highly abusive things because she doesn't want to have sexy times with a murderer. And he says, are you willing to bet your life on it? And then she is like, yeah, and bolts into the woods at night. I believe it's raining. It's pretty terrible. I think she's barefoot. It's just overall not a great time. He catches up to her because he is literally a supervillain, the antagonist of this story. He is the bad guy right now and says even more manipulative stuff. Grabbing both of my wrists, he pins them above my head in one hand while the other wraps around the back of my neck. Tell me, Addie, do you think killing pedophiles is wrong? He asks sharply. Sorry, this sentence was really weird and I didn't think it was a complete sentence. His one light eye. I gotta restart this. Okay. Tell me, Addie, do you think killing pedophiles is wrong? He asks sharply. His one light eye shining bright in the darkness, shining bright like a diamond. Sorry, this is very serious. I think killing people is wrong, I shout in his face, breathing heavily and allowing my body a moment's rest. I'm scared and my body is exhausted. Why? He volleys back. Because society told you it was? Because humans fabricated morals so they can control and manipulate people into law and order? Do you think other mammals follow the same morals and rules? We're all fucking animals, baby. The only difference is I don't suppress mine. Panting and angry, I buck against him, trying to rear him off me, but accomplishes nothing. It's like an elephant sitting on a hamster. He presses my wrist against the ground as he rearranges himself, using his knees to spread my legs and settle between them. Even in the cold rain, he is as hard as a fucking rock. He needs to go to the doctor. You're going to get me killed, I argued, because you had to be sick and torture them so badly and made national news. You want to know what's fucking sick, Addie? Those men you're so upset about dying are the same men that hurt, rape, and torture innocent fucking children and get off on it. They thrive on it. Do you think any amount of punishment in this world will ever make up for even one child they tortured and killed? I snapped my mouth shut, tears burning my retinas. And what's worse is that despite claiming you as my own, the society had already marked you before I even came into the picture, which means you're in danger, whether he's dead or not. Did you know he tried to have you kidnapped at Satan's affair? While you were running around through Annie's playhouse, he was in the middle of sicking his dogs to kidnap you, and I made sure that didn't fucking happen. If you thought you had any fucking chance of getting rid of me, get it out of your head. You need my protection more than you need my... And I fully intend on giving you both. No, you want to know what I think is wrong, Zaid? What's wrong is that you use hunting pedophiles as your get out of jail free card for every shitty thing that you go on and do to this innocent woman. You have yet to have a full conversation about likes and interests. You guys don't even know each other. You saw her in a poster while you were going past a bookstore. And let's remember, you don't read fiction. Let's get one thing straight. You don't even like the genre she writes in. You decide to go in this bookstore and obsess over a hot woman and then proceed to commit crimes. So many crimes because you didn't want to be fake. What? Excuse me? And you want to know what the funny thing is, Zaid? I do think we should be killing pedophiles. I don't have a problem with you killing pedophiles. Go on, keep killing fucking pedophiles. I have a problem with you using that as your one thing that you do for society. That is your one catch-all. That is your one reason to keep going after this woman. and torturing her for your sick little pleasures because you believe you deserve it for doing one good thing. Addie didn't have that speech prepared like I did, so she falls for his ramblings. He is starting to do sexy times when she really doesn't want to, but remember, Zayd is the only one that can withdraw consent, not her. She has no rights. He rips her shirt off and then they have sexy times in the rain while she's against a tree, which sounds really uncomfy. I'm not gonna lie. And they do sexy times, they make up, she's super into Zayd now, wahoo, moving on. After a many sexy times later, they are standing on a balcony and they're having a very, very weird philosophical debate, conversation that they might be reincarnations of Gigi and Ronaldo. And this is coming from the guy who doesn't read fiction. By the way, that sounds really, really weird, but I can almost guarantee you that Ronaldo and Gigi's stalker situationship is way more healthy than y'all's. Do not diss Gigi and Ronaldo because at least it was consensual. Okay, Zayd is now getting bad news. He finds out that when he was at Savior's getting buddy-buddy with Mr. Boviri, the lawyer's sleeve was wet or something. I really don't remember how he figures it out, but somehow we figure out that a child sacrifice was happening right under Zayd's nose. He doesn't take that very well. He spends some time info dumping on Addie that the reason why he's trying to stop child sex trafficking is because he got a hair up his ass about it. He has no tragic backstory. His parents were completely fine people who died in a car wreck. He had a seemingly good childhood. He just wants to use his hacking skills and his want to murder people for the forces of good or something to that effect. I think what the author was trying to do was trying to say that people can be badasses and people can be doing good things without having a tragic backstory. But it actually makes it worse because he had loving parents and he still turned out to be one of the biggest assholes and manipulative bitches I've ever read about. And he also explains that the reason why he drops roses everywhere like a flower boy is because it was his mother's favorite flower and that she always cut off the thorns so that way he wouldn't hurt himself holding the damn thing. The roses. Why the roses? I smile. I was waiting for her to ask me about those. My mother, her favorite flowers were roses. She always had them all over the house with the thorns clipped so I wouldn't hurt myself. One year I told her that I'd be sad when she died because all the roses would die with her. So she gave me a plastic rose and said, as long as I have that rose, she'll never be truly gone. I shrug. I guess I wanted to see roses all over your house too. Maybe because you feel like home. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Do you even know this woman? No, you don't. Dia comes in, interrupts the moment, and discovers that the person who has been SAing her this entire time is none other than her boss. Zayd dips, leaving Addie to explain why she lied to Dia, despite Dia specifically asking if who she was dating was in fact her boss. She also tells Dia that Zayd is the reason why they didn't get kidnapped by a cult, so I guess that kind of dampens the blow a little bit. I'm not mad at you for your relationship with Zayd, Addie. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand how anyone could accept that their lover is a stalker. I also don't think it's the makings of a healthy relationship. What? No way! The dude obviously has issues. I nod, agreeing with her assessment. I'll have you know that I do know what nodding means. You don't need to tell me that nodding means you are in agreement. You should just say, I nod, or I agreed. One or the other, please. What she's saying are the same things I have thought myself. Also, don't tell me that. I know that. Just let Dia speak, okay? Shut up. But knowing that Z is your stalker oddly reassures me. I never knew him personally, obviously. I didn't even know what he looked like, but what he does is incredibly admirable. He puts his life on the line every day, walks into the lion's den himself and saves a bunch of innocent souls. He has helped countless people and taken down so many rings already. And I don't have to see what's in the videos to know that Zayd takes them to heart. She sighs and a sardonic smile flashes on her face. He stalks people for a living, so I suppose it's no surprise that the tendency has bled into his love life. There is not a sane person in this goddamn book. There is no one here. No one. Ugh, throw them all in the trash. After our dumb heart-to-heart, Dia notices that there's a strange envelope somewhere, and would you look at that, all of the evidence for Gigi's murder is right in these mysterious envelopes. Wow, I wonder where that came from. My Genevieve, it pains me to write this letter. I sit here and I mourn for what could have been, for what could still be, yet you refuse to see. I loved you since the moment I saw you, Genevieve. I have loved you, though you have married another. And now that I know you've given yourself to a different man, a man that's not me, my love still persists. I've waited so long for you already, and now yet another has come between us, has stopped you from taking you as mine. Wow, that was really badly written. Why do you insist on doing this to me, to us? It plagues me, keeps me from sleeping at night. The only thing I can think of doing is cutting you from my life to end this misery. For good. Sincerely, your true love. That's Frank, by the way. Mark's chief of police dad of old. But don't tell Addie that. She hasn't figured that out yet. Addie makes the rational decision to finally explore the haunted attic, but this book isn't about ghosts, so don't worry about the fact that it's haunted. Addie puts her hand in a mystery hole, finds a mystery bag, and inside this mystery bag is a golden Rolex with blood on it. Ooh. Ah. Dia knows a guy who could probably knows another guy who could probably figure out whose Rolex that was because of serial numbers or something. Whatever. Everything comes together along with some graphology on Dia's part. And now we can definitely prove that Gigi's killer was in fact Frank. So cold case solved. We also figured out that the dead grandmother was the one who hid her mother's murder because Frank threatened to kill her. And she lived with that until the day she died. After this fun revelation, Addie goes to bed and then misses her insane boyfriend. How long has he been stalking me for? 3 months? Not very long at all. In fact, that's such an insignificant amount of time, it almost makes me sick. There's still so much I don't know about him. You know nothing about him. Nothing. You just know that his hobby is hunting down pedophiles. What's his favorite color? Does he have any allergies? I hope he's allergic to all my favorite foods so I don't have to share. Or at least, I hope he doesn't like them. More for me. And I hope that I don't like his favorite foods, because if I do, I'd probably eat off his plate too. He probably wouldn't mind, and that softens my heart into a pile of mush, because somehow a man that wouldn't care if I ate his food fell in love with me. That's so fucking cute. Who are you talking to? Is this man that you're telling me about in the room with us right now? Where is this man? Also, why would you hope that someone's allergic to your favorite foods? Don't you know that means you can't have that food around them, you idiot? I cannot stress how little 3 months is in terms of span of time. And I also cannot stress how they haven't had a singular conversation that hasn't been about pedophiles and sex or murder. She's building a man off of a fantasy, which is what this book is supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, the fantasy of Zayd is not very enticing. So what's Zayd doing? He's brooding. Turns out the person who got sacrificed was 24 years old. I don't know if this is a change. It seems very specific that this person is 24 years old when the rest of the people who've been sacrificed are children, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Zayd's very upset about it. Mr. Loviri, the president's lawyer, don't forget about that, has invited us out to dinner before initiation, pre-initiation dinner. Mr. Baveri has a minor who, I can't quite remember if I touched on this, but Zaid uses a picture of a minor that he saved a long time ago, who's still a minor, by the way, but gave him the permission to use her picture. So that way he looks like he's in with the pedophiles. Anyway, that picture he showed to Mr. Boveri at some point, I guess. And Mr. Boveri was like, oh, I know a little girl that would suit your tastes. So there's a little girl at this dinner. I don't know if we're supposed to eat her or what, but she's here. Zaid is going to this society dinner with the full intention of not sacrificing or eating a little girl. Thank goodness. There's absolutely no way I'm letting a young child get sacrificed or abused tonight. This will be a matter of how to get a girl out safely while maintaining innocence. If I'm to be brought into the underground dungeon tomorrow, then I need to stay on Daniel's good side. I want your eyes on Addie tonight as well. If something happens, you tell me immediately. He chuckles. Do you think she'll like it when I stalk her too? I pin him with a glare. You watch her for any purpose in ensuring her safety, I'll cut your dick off and feed it to you. His face scrunches up in disgust, but I don't miss the flash of terror in his eyes. Just kidding, dude, he assures, his hands raised in surrender. I like my women willing. A wicked smile forms, though the heat in my eye remains. Sounds to me like you don't understand a woman's body well enough to know when it sings for you, even when her mouth tries to resist. That's the harmful rhetoric I was talking about. Don't anyone say that shit to you, okay? Baby girl, you deserve better. Jay's sputtering follows me out, and I can't help but laugh when I hear him on the phone immediately after, getting reassurance from one of his booty calls. I don't think I've talked about this side character, but there's a side character named Jay, and he is honestly the best character out of this whole novel because I don't know him well enough. He probably has something bad about him, but he's essentially the man in the ear, the man in the chair. He does a lot of the hacker research, and he walks Zaid through a lot of his missions. He's like dispatch. Jay is not very important. I just happen to like him because he is the most tolerable person and he likes his women willing. We make it to the spooky sacrificing child house dinner party thing. And it has a lot of oddities, including a painting of a child crying blood, as if we needed a reminder that these guys are the antagonists. They have to be the antagonists. They have a weird painting. The little girl comes out, and the little girl's name is Sarah. Little Sarah is extremely terrified, as anybody would be, but don't worry, Zaid is on the case. Zaid does some acting in order to get him and Sarah away from the horrible, scary, terrible people, and then he calls a fake FBI raid on his James Bond watch. And don't worry about this fake FBI raid, because the real FBI agents know that it's happening. Why doesn't he just not work with the FBI? The FBI would love busting a huge satanic child trafficking cult, but sorry, I'm thinking too much. Anyway, Sarah gets saved because of course she does. How old are you, shortcake? 5, she chirps. I'll try to find your mommy and daddy, okay? If I can't, I'll make sure you're safe. She nods her little head, her brown eyes now latched back onto me. Then will you be my daddy? For the love of everything pure and holy and good in this world, do not raise children, you psychotic, stupid son of a bitch. The fake raid goes well, and Zaid is let off to go frolic to Addie's bedroom. I could have tried to fuck her while asleep, but I decided to hold off on that until Addie admits her love and freely accepts mine, until I could fuck her without a fight. Though I think some part of Addie will always fight me. Although I've taken advantage of Addie on several occasions, at least her being awake and coherent allowed me to watch her body's reaction. Doesn't make it right, but her body has always wept for me. I'm so tired. Him and Addie have consensual sexy times. Zane lets Addie know that the raid on the society where we take down this huge child trafficking ring is happening tomorrow. And we're finally getting to the finale of this book. Buckle up, because it gets a little wacky. Zaid gets ready for his debut into cult activities. He is ushered into a creepy, dark altar room where there's a whole bunch of other people in cult robes, and all of them are horrible, terrible pedophiles. They lay out a child for him to sacrifice, and he tells that little girl, "Close your eyes." He gets the sacrificial knife, pretends he's gonna stab the girl, and instead stabs the guy next to him. Iconic. Zaid has agents around and he tells them to open fire, and they do. And it's just gore and viscera as they slaughter all of these pedophiles. Zaid frees the girl and hands the girl off to a different person so that way she can be escorted to away from the firefight. Just when you think that Zaid is about ready to be successful, a huge explosion goes off and Zaid is just thrown off of his feet from this explosion. His ears are ringing. Everything's in slow-mo. You can see it right now. Jay, who's usually the man in the chair, is here for some reason, and he's running up to Zaid, and he's like, "It was a setup! It was a setup!" Zaid looks to a person and goes, "You?" And it cuts off. And now we go to Addie. We're almost done. We're almost done. Just Addie's, this is the last chapter. This is it. The moment we've been waiting for. The end of it. Addie tells her mom that they were able to solve Gigi's murder. So cool. How fabulous. Addie learns that her mother knew about the murder the whole time, and that the strange envelope that had all of the evidence that helped us solve the murder was actually given to us by Mommy Dearest. With all of this information, with all of this revelations, Addie goes to bed. And then she's awakened by Daya, who is texting her that she needs someone, she needs her pal, and if Addie can come over. And despite Addie's flaws, she is a girl's girl. And so she gets up and she goes and she starts driving to Daya's house. A car T-bones her, crashes into her so bad that she flips, and she wakes up and she's upside down, and there is a gang of men threatening her and telling her to shut up. And that's when we learn that Max is behind this. And then Addie gets kidnapped. The end. That was a lot. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't like this book. If you do like this book, that's completely fine. I don't know why you watched the entire video up to this point to be reassured by me, but I promise, if you like this book, that's fine. You can like whatever it is you like. However, I despise this book. There's a lot to go over. There's the blatant disregard for consent by the male lead, the extremely weird and extra cult that did not need to be that. However, I do have some positives that we could go over before I absolutely tear this book a new one. I see pieces of a good romance, even if stalker romance isn't my genre. The idea of a truly morally gray, vigilante type person, finding a person and then keeping them safe from the badness of the outside world from a distance, and then falling in love with them, and then shenanigans ensue. That sounds like a fun time to me. The execution, however, was not my thing. And I actually think that this idea, if written by a different author or this idea had been given to a different person, it would have worked pretty well. I like the setting and the idea of the main character. I always like a main character who has found their calling and enjoys whatever career they happen to be part of. And then that career does the very unrealistic thing of being able to afford to give a facelift to an ancient manor that was inherited. I wish I had an inherited manor, a huge haunted Gothic manor where the main character solves a murder and there are ghosts. Like, you can't beat a setting like that. That's really the problem, though. I like the idea of it. The pieces of this wonderful puzzle are all there, but they're just put together in just god awful ways. The idea is just fumbled so hard with characters that are so bad that it makes this good idea stink so much. I have died within the fumes. The only normal person in this whole novel is Jay. And Jay, we don't actually get to see long enough for us to actually form an opinion. I bet he's pretty awful too if we get to know him. Addie is just frustrating as a person. And I can't quite place my finger on why I just dislike her so much. I don't know if it's the writing style. So her thoughts are portrayed in a way that really makes me mad. And so all of my annoyance on this main character is because I don't like the writing. Or if she's actually just stupid and annoying, which, I mean, honestly, porque no los dos, my guy. She is actively stupid and she's aware that she does actively stupid things. And you can play a character that is aware of their lack of common sense and play it for laughs. But this book is not well written. And so what should be written for laughs is actually irritating. She also just sucks as a person. I wouldn't hang out with this person. No, thank you. However, I don't wish any of the events that happen in this book or the next book to happen to any person, whether I like them or not. She's going through like one of my biggest nightmares and isn't having a mental breakdown during the entire thing, which is incredible. But let's get one thing straight. Just because I think she's dumb as a brick doesn't mean that her falling for Zaid's manipulation and having her being manipulated by Zaid into thinking he loves her and that she loves him as well. I don't blame her for that. If I was going through that much psychological torture, I would probably fall for the same exact thing. I don't care that she gets turned on by horror. Honestly, good for her. But she doesn't need to be stalked by a wannabe Batman who justifies rape in order to find love. I don't agree with that. Speaking of Zaid, even if I used every single word in every single language on this earth, dead or alive, or haven't been invented, I would not have enough words to describe the insurmountable hatred that I have for this character. If I was to meet this character, it would be on sight. I've complained about Zaid enough in this entire recap and review, so let's not waste any more words on that pathetic, cringy, arrogant, and ignorant rapist piece of shit. The biggest problem that I have, besides Zaid's whole existence, is the whole satanic child sacrificing, except that one time, cult. There are canonical ghosts in this universe, so I guess that sacrificing people to gain some power. What power, though? Like metaphysical, metaphorical? What power? It is completely possible. But why does Zaid not know anything about any of these powers? Why is it not important? I get the whole child part is the big thing, but what about the powers? And then on top of that, Zaid is trying to stop not just the entirety of the skin trade, but also this child trafficking and sacrificial cult thing. Why is he doing both at the same time? You know that sex trafficking in general is bad. We didn't have to make it child trafficking in order to make this feel important, right? When you make something this big and this off the wall, you really start to lose me. If you wanted me to take it seriously, you should have just started with, I think there is simply a normal skin trade ring, and I'm going to find it. And then as you uncover the layers and the onion, and when you uncover the onion, that's when you find about the rest of it. You don't need the rest of it, but if you were very hard set on having people sacrificing other people, then go ahead, I guess. As it stands right now, it just smells so much like you're trying way too hard. For me, it's kind of hard to shock me or disturb me, But it is possible, especially if you do it naturally. But this is so ham-fisted. This is so baby's first disturbing novel that it just reads as cringy to me. The only reason why you went this big is because you wanted to freak people out. That's it. And I don't think that's a good reason for your cult or the bigness to be here. But enough of that complaining stuff. Enough of that review. Gross. I'm going to fix this story because, like I said, there are so many puzzle pieces. We're just going to have to put them together correctly. If you are inspired by my fixing of this book to go and write your own thing, go ahead. Be free. Take this idea. I will never write this. First things first. We're adding more ghosts. Haunting Adeline is going to mean something other than being a wacky stalker. If we are solving a murder in a haunted house, I want the ghosts to be involved. One of the main things that we need to fix in this story is making Gigi's murder actually interesting and worth pursuing. And if ghosts are a canonical thing in this universe, we have to pursue the fact that there are ghosts that are canonical in this universe. So picture this. Come with me and you'll see a world of imagination. Our dead grandmother never covered up Gigi's murder because Gigi's murder was ruled an accident. Addie's mom also has no idea that there was a murder because, like I said, the murder was an accident. And we can even make it a big thing in the main character's life. For example, a really easy way to probably cover up a murder is pushing someone down the stairs. So ever since then, Addie's mom and Addie's grandmother have always been really, really nervous about stairs. They always have to be carpeted. You always have to childproof them, blah, blah, blah. So we already got emotional connection. The reason why we can't go up and down the stairs is because Gigi, our great grandmother, died from the stairs a long time ago. When Gigi moves into this house because grandma died, she starts getting ghostly visions of Gigi. Now, it could be actual interactions with Gigi, whether it be spoken, unspoken, what have you. It could be memories of Gigi being reenacted at certain times of the day. Ooh. There are so many cool ways that you could make Gigi a ghost and then finding out things to not only uncover the fact that her accident was not an accident, but was indeed a murder. And then she had a stalker. And then what? At the beginning of the book, we have that forced booty call that Daya set up for us with Grayson to set up the whole murder and journals and stuff. But let's just think how we could cut out that entire cringy, horrible, terrible interaction. And instead, while Addie is either tired or she's working on a book or maybe Diet just left or what have you, she sees Gigi leading to where Gigi hid her journals. There's a lot of ways that you could make this super interesting because one, you can make it to where no one knew that Gigi had these journals, but it's definitely Gigi because Gigi has the red lipstick and maybe there's a red lipstick tube. I'm taking out the fact that she kisses the page of her journals because that's really freaking weird and I hate it. But let's just say that there was a tube of 1940s lipstick and Gigi has signed every page. So she makes every journal entry like a letter. So, dear Bobathy, blah, 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 sincerely your love, Gigi. You know what I'm saying? So when Addie is reading through this journal, at first it's just normal stuff. This is the journal of a 1940s housewife. And then it starts getting into the actual stalker bit. And then it also gets into how she is scared for her life because she thinks someone wants to murder her. And she doesn't know if it's the stalker, if it's the stalker's boss, if it's this person, is it that person? And then she ends up dead. And then we connect the dots and we figure out that Gigi was murdered. That is infinitely more interesting than Grayson and no ghosts. On top of that, Mark Williams, which is the son of Frank Williams who killed Gigi, which I think is a fine enough twist. I think that he should have a bigger impact and more bearing on Addie's life. Mark Williams was raised around Gigi and then never kept up with the family. I was under the assumption that maybe we were a little bit of a close community. And we don't even need to be a close community. It's just that the Williams family is friends with the Riley family. This sets up a lot of things. If Mark Williams is one of the big bads of the book, then it can really hammer home the fact that you really don't know who you're friends with, including the people who are closest to you. And if you wanted it to be a pedophile ring, you can hammer it home that pedophiles live among us, because they do. Second, it creates tension between Zaid and Addie later on in the book, because Addie could vouch for Mark Williams's character, only for Zaid to prove that Mark Williams is a bad person and that she needs to stay away. And third, it creates a lot of tension for the audience when Zaid figures out that Mark Williams knows Addie, and we know that Mark Williams knows Addie, and we know what Zaid knows, but Addie doesn't know what we know. You see what I'm saying? When Addie learns of his disgusting nature, but also has figured out the nature of Gigi's accident and needs to ask Mark details of the accident, it creates tension because she knows that he's disgusting. She knows his secret, and yet she still has to act like nothing is wrong. I think Zaid himself needs a lot of reworking as well, because he is pretty awful. For one, we're getting rid of the satanic child sacrificing cult, because you don't need to add Satan in order to make the skin trade more terrifying. Human trafficking is scary enough. And yes, you can add children to it to really heighten the disturbing nature, but you don't even need to add children. I promise you, being trafficked is disturbing enough. Another thing we need to do is dial down how far Zaid is in his vigilante journey. He needs to not be at the end where he's an untouchable badass. He needs to be not necessarily at the beginning, but maybe at the middle beginning. It would be so much cooler if we got to see him grow his skills, figure out how to infiltrate these things easier, even gain employees that makes life easier for him. I think it would be so much more impactful if he has taken out smaller little rings and then has moved on to finding more and more rings, because he keeps finding threads. You need to show me that he's actually a good detective, that he's actually good at getting information from these people or finding information. Show me that his hacking means something. I also think that you don't have to give him a tragic backstory in order for him to be involved in trying to take down the skin trade, but you do need to give him at least a little bit of a reason. Maybe his friend was about ready to be trafficked and he saved her, and then they both went out and started, just anything, something small, something to latch on to emotionally. The thing that I think people forget is that the audience wants to see the small stuff before they see the big stuff. You want to see them struggle before you see them succeed, because if not, it just feels like a waste of time. This also mirrors something that Addie is going through as well. Zaid is starting to find threads of a mystery that he didn't realize that was in front of him, and so is Addie. Addie is also finding threads of a murder mystery she had no idea about. And you can have each of their mysteries grow in tension alongside each other, parallel to each other. You can even have them intersect somewhere. Zaid has already done it. Zaid is at the height. Addie is not. Addie is starting from the beginning and going up. He is already up here and she is down here, and we want them to be at the same point. You can even create an opportunity. Maybe the opportunity is Mark Williams for them to have to work together so that way they can get over the stalker part. Which, by the way, let's talk about that real quick. I think that instead of falling in love with a poster of Addie, that he should instead, through his hacking skills, find out that Addie has been targeted by this trafficking ring. And so he is sort of using her as bait, not really, but also trying to keep her safe. And that's the reason why he starts falling in love with her, because he's tailing her. He's watching her. He's learning what she likes. She's learning what she doesn't like. She is learning about her friends. He learns that she's friends with Mark Williams, which is, woo, surprising. Is she involved? But finds out, no, he's just a terrible person. He's not involved at all. Instead of falling in love with her with one glance from across the room, he's falling in love with her organically. He's finding out that they like the same TV shows. He's finding out that their schedules are sort of the same. You know what I'm saying? After he realizes he's falling in love with her, he starts leaving her roses in places and gets a little bit more bolder and tries to convince himself that she can love him, but he doesn't know how to broach a conversation with her, because why would he? He knows every single thing about her. I think he can find ways to make this whole stalker situationship a little bit more wholesome, in that maybe her car breaks down and he goes and gets it fixed, or her window gets broken, so he replaces it while she's away. There's things that he can do that to express his love that isn't rape. I think that you can make the relationship between Addie and Arch bigger, like they're actually getting with each other, so that way Zaid can do some information digging on him, because who is this guy? And then finds out that Arch and Arch's family is tied to the ring, or even just he's a terrible person. So when he goes and kidnaps Arch, he's doing it because he's protecting Addie, because he learned this information and said, how could I possibly protect Addie if I don't take out these people? This also would help us as the audience root for Zaid if he finds out that Arch is a terrible person. We find out along with Zaid that Arch is a terrible person. And now we know that Addie is dating Arch, and we're like, Addie, you shouldn't be dating this guy, but this guy is hoodwinking her. We're rooting for Zaid to take out Arch because Arch is a bad person. He can text her and say, hey, don't go out with this guy, and she can ignore it because who is this? And then Arch could totally have information that Zaid needs, because at the core, Addie is the focus of whatever's going on. There is so many opportunities that you could take to interconnect Addie and Zaid, so that way they keep having to get together. That isn't just unconsensual, one-sided relationship stuff. I don't even think the kink of scary stuff, being chased, all of that other stuff is all that bad. You just need to make it consensual. With Mark, I think you have a chance to really make a good, compelling villain. Just cool it with the whole government is in on it thing. I think that having a senator who is well liked, has a good public face, being involved with something so horrible and terrible is realistic enough, but also not so big that it takes you out of it. If you make the main problem too big, if you expand it too much, it becomes background noise. Think about how Marvel, every single villain is bigger and better, and the threat is bigger and bigger each time there's a movie, and then you just stop caring because you can't conceptualize it. I'm thinking exactly like that. Cool it on the whole out of my realm conspiracy and dial it back. With this groundwork, you could really go in a lot of good directions that don't involve sacrificing people. You could still have a cult because fictional cults are fun, but I think that you don't need it in order for it to impact you. You could still have the set piece of the Satan's affair, except I wouldn't even have Mark Williams over there. Mark Williams is going to be our new bad guy. He is the guy who we have built trust with over the course of the book. He's not going to be going over to Satan's affair but himself. He's sending his cronies, and then Zaid can act like, oh my god, I tried to help, but then I got attacked. You know, more groundwork. All of the groundwork that we have still leads to the conclusion of Addie being kidnapped by Max, and Mark Williams foiling the raid of Zaid in the Societies Club. Do you see what I mean? All of the ingredients are right there. They're right there. Final thoughts. There is a debate on whether or not the minor in question had their age up on their TikTok page when BookTok went feral over them. But I also don't think you should be recommending this book to anybody that isn't deep in the trenches of dark romance. Do I think this is the worst book to ever sear the eyeballs of the masses? God, no. And I really don't care that a lot of people like it. It has some major flaws and is severely not my thing, but I don't know. The only thing that I really wish to impart to you was, one, this was recommended to a minor. Even if adults didn't know it was a minor, if you don't see ID, they're not 18, guys. Don't recommend this shit willy-nilly, okay? That's the biggest lesson. Don't recommend stuff willy-nilly. Adults need to really be conscious of who they're recommending what media. I understand that adults want to be able to talk and do adult-like things in their own spaces, and that's fine. But please make sure that you're not accidentally inviting children into these spaces. This situation with BookTok recommending this to a minor, whether on purpose or on accident, shouldn't have happened. I don't have a solution to this problem other than chill out, calm down, and maybe I'll beat somebody over the head with a newspaper. I don't know, I'm not the internet police. I'm just a girl who wanted to yak about haunting Adeline for 2 hours. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I did, even though it took me several weeks, a few family deaths, and a lot of depression to get through it. Make sure to stop by the description to, 1, look at some of my sources, and 2, look at some of my merch that I've made on Ko-Fi. Ko-Fi? I don't know how to say it. Other than watching my channel or following me on Twitch, it is the best way to support me. Get excited for the next video because it's going to be a deep look at the history of Mothman. Until next time, this has been Ruthie from the Untold Sitcom Studios, signing off and locking up. Have a good night. I did it. I can't believe I did it. Oh my God. This took so long.